I'm Danny Gasparini, and welcome to this segment of Penn Voice. I'm joined today by Pamela Estes, who is the Human Trafficking Advocacy Coordinator for San Mateo County. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, Danny.
So I think people might not necessarily know how we would define human trafficking or even think that it exists here in San Mateo County. So can you kind of give us just an overview of the varying degrees of what we're experiencing here?
Sure. So many people think of human trafficking as something that happens in a foreign country, but it happens much closer to home than most people realize. It became a federal crime back in the year 2000 when the Trafficking Victims Protection Act was passed, and it's the forced labor or force of a commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Those are elements of the crime. With the exception of a minor, force, fraud, and coercion are not required for that element of the crime. But it happens in every demographic. It happens to U.S.-born, it happens to foreign-born, undocumented persons who are here, minors, adults, men, women, people of all gender identities. Traffickers typically will prey on vulnerabilities, and all of us have a vulnerability in our life, but those who maybe are homeless or runaways or lack a good social safety network are those that are more at risk and are often targeted by traffickers.
So your council was formed to protect our community members who may be forced into or coerced into unfair labor situations, unfair pay, human trafficking from a sexual standpoint. Mm-hmm. What are some of the programs that you would say were your outstanding highlights that you brought to San Mateo County in this past year or since you were incepted?
Well, it probably is best to go back and give a little history. Mm-hmm. So back in 2015, through Measure K funds, the county created a human trafficking advocacy coordinator or human trafficking program coordinator position. And back in 2017, they developed a second position, which is human trafficking advocacy coordinator, which is the position I sit in now. In December of 2017, they hired John Vanek as the human trafficking program coordinator. And then in January of 2018, I was hired as the human trafficking advocacy coordinator. And we work through the sheriff's office, but we take policy and direction from the police chiefs and sheriff's association. And one of the first things that John, the program coordinator, wanted to do was to actually do an assessment on the scope and prevalence of human trafficking in San Mateo County. So we audited police reports, we sent questionnaires out to service providers so we could find out what was actually happening in the county. And through that, determined that in the 3-year period between mid-2015 and mid-2018, there were probably over 100 victims of human trafficking that were served through different agencies throughout the county, and learned about where there were gaps in services. Yeah. And so we are working with the existing county agencies and other nonprofit organizations who are already involved in this fight, just to try to help close those gaps and also make the response to human trafficking more robust within our county.
Could you give us a couple of examples of things that you found when you were doing your survey?
Well, what we learned is that there are children that are being trafficked in our county. They are served by the Child and Family Services Department. Many adults and many traffic victims in general don't disclose. Many of them don't view themselves as victims. They may view themselves as just dealing with the consequences of their own choices. And a lot of times disclosure doesn't occur immediately, or it may happen in the course of gaining services for some other issue. And so it's a very hidden crime, right. But yet people may be walking past victims on a regular basis on the street. Traffickers usually use psychological means to hold their victims, almost an invisible tether, and so they're not like maybe a victim of other crimes where you immediately know that you're a victim and you call out for help.
Right. So how do you combat this? Is it a knowledge or an education campaign so that someone who may in fact be trafficked understands, oh my gosh, that's me? Or is it that you're educating me as a citizen of Redwood City of what to look for? And I imagine there's even a law enforcement or a criminal component to seeing the usual suspect that continues to show up at the root of some of these crimes that, you know, they are hiring underage, under law individuals and holding them to labor that is not up to, you know, standards.
Right, right. Well, the nature of your question just focuses on the nature of the answer. It's very complex. It's very different. Everybody's circumstance is unique. But in combating human trafficking, it has to be the whole community, and it's prevention, it's identification, it's restoration, and people play a role in the different spectrum of where that is. From the prevention standpoint, you as a citizen just educating yourself more about the issue so that you can spot it. I know someone said many years ago that we need the educated eyes and ears of many so that they understand what they're seeing and they can report it. There's a National Human Trafficking Hotline, which I encourage everybody to put into their contacts, so that if you can spend as much as 30 minutes educating yourself on this issue so that you know how to spot it, then you can make a report. It's a national number, and it's open 24/7. They support about 200 different languages, and you can make anonymous tips. And those tips go to law enforcement, who can then go out and make an investigation of what you're seeing. Just as a community, just supporting at-risk youth is really important. As a parent, monitoring your kids' contact with social media and their social media use is also important. And those are some of the prevention things that can be done. There are a lot of organizations in the county, even nonprofits, that work in this area, so financially supporting them, being a volunteer to help them with their needs is also really critical as well.
And I know in all of this education process, you've actually had the criminal justice system go along with you and saying we've got to put some teeth behind prosecuting individuals and or companies that are using human trafficking as either labor or to do things, again, against individuals' will. So what are some of those laws that have now been enacted so that you have some way in which to turn these situations around?
Right. So there are criminal laws which against human trafficking, which also increase the prison time. So it is a very serious crime to get charged with. There are laws now that require human trafficking education in the schools.
Okay.
There's also a notice requirement, and there's a laundry list of businesses in California that are mandated to post a notice about human trafficking, just so that their employees and then people who enter their businesses will actually know about the human trafficking hotline where they can call and either report circumstances, or if someone is a victim, they can call or text to receive help. And many businesses are required to do that. And we worked with a group of people through our Human Trafficking Initiative to revamp the poster recently, and we have it available if people want to email or call the Human Trafficking Program. We can make those posters available. So even those people who have a business that's not necessarily mandated to post it, it would be helpful to the public to post it, because jurisdictions where that posting notice has been in place, they've seen an increase in the number of reports, which means the increase potentially in the number of victims identified and helped.
Right. And so that when we talk about laws, that is the way in which we're going to try and combat this issue with prevention and education.
Yeah.
So we just have about a minute left. So what are some of the other things that the community, besides getting educated ourselves and what we are looking for, what are some of the other things in which the community can support your advocacy council?
As I mentioned earlier, if people would put their human trafficking hotline number in their contacts, take the time to get educated on human trafficking. If they work at a business that might have an intersection with human trafficking at some level, maybe advocate for employee training just so that people can better understand what's going on. Or attend an event, bring a friend along with an event or to an advocacy event to learn more. And also on the prevention side, get involved with one of the nonprofits to financially support them or volunteer, or be a mentor to a teen or a young adult, or anyone who's on the at-risk spectrum in our community would be a big help.
And when we close the program, we're going to make sure that we put all of your contact information on the screen so that people know where to call and what website to look at for more information.
Super.
Well, thank you, Pamela, for coming and talking to us once again about this really important topic for us here in San Mateo County. And thanks to the county for all their work in doing in elevating this program to have great people like you
Thank
involved
you,
with it. And we'll see all of you next time on Penn Voice.